Hello everybody! A few months ago I prepared some videos about Broken April novel written by Kadare, and those videos were prepared in Albanian. I've noticed that they have been moderately successful, so I thought it would be a good thing to prepare some videos in English too. But as you can imagine, my English is very far from being perfect, because I'm not an English native speaker. Anyway, I will try to do my best and I will try to be as clear as possible, so at least you can understand what I'm saying. Now, when I first read the novel Broken April, its text, its script was too familiar to me. Why? First of all, because I was born in Northern Albania, not very far from some of the places that are mentioned in the novel, and I lived there for many years. Second, I've heard about the Kanun of Lekë Dukagjini, the canon, since I was a child. Third, before I read Broken April novel, I had read the Kanun of Lekë Dukagjini, so I had some knowledge of the canon of Lekë Dukagjini. Now, in order to understand Broken April novel, I think that we should examine at least three aspects. First of all, Albanians' history in the Balkans. Second, we should examine the Kanun of Lekë Dukagjini. Third, we should know some Albanian words that are related to the novel, especially to some character names in the novel. Now, with regard to Albanians' history in the Balkans, I'm saying Albanians because Albania as a state was created only in 1912. Before 1912 didn't exist Albania as a state. And beside that, I want to say that Albanians in the Balkans live in other countries too. That's to say, not only in Albania, but in Kosovo too, for example. I'm not saying it for nationalistic purposes, but I'm simply saying it because it's related to the novel, because Northern Albania shares its border with Kosovo. Now, for those who don't know, the Balkans are more or less between Italy and Turkey. I'm simplifying here, but I'm saying it so you can have a simple picture of the Balkans. Now, when I'm referring to history, I mean that we should understand the fact that toward the end of the 15th century, Albanians in the Balkans fell under Ottoman rule, Ottoman dominion. This means that they remained under Ottoman dominion, Ottoman rule, until the beginning of the 20th century. Another aspect that we should understand here, another factor that should understand here is the fact that the Ottoman Empire extended its rule, its law, especially in urban areas. So some remote mountainous areas, especially in Northern Albania, actually were not under direct Ottoman rule. So these mountainous Northern Albania areas were governed by themselves, by their customs, not by Ottoman rules, Ottoman laws. At the same time, these communities in Northern Albania didn't have a state, so didn't have a central state, didn't have what we say police, judges and so on. So, as I said, they were governed by their customs. And let me say something more about the Ottoman conquest. Before the Ottoman conquest, Albanians were of Catholic religion in the north and of Orthodox religion in the south. This is due to the fact that there were different influences in the north and in the south. Now, after the Ottoman conquest, a significant part of the Albanians in the Balkans converted into Islam. That's to say, they became Muslims. But a significant number too remained Christians. So today we have three religious communities: the Muslim community, which is the largest community. Then we have other two Christian communities, that's to say, the Orthodox community and the Catholic community. Now there are some other minority religious communities, but they are at least insignificant, almost insignificant. Now, I'm saying it because it's important to understand the novel, because when Kadare uses some character names in the novel, or last names, surnames, he tries to represent Christian community and Muslim community. That's why I'm saying it, so in order that you can understand when we will see the character names in the novel. Now, let's see something about the Kanun, or the Canon of Lekë Dukagjini. Now, Kanun means law, canon, law. But let's see, first of all, Lekë Dukagjini. Lekë Dukagjini is a historical figure, that's to say, he was a real person, and he lived in 15th century Northern Albania. He was an important person, and probably he was a member of a noble family, because, for example, his last name, Duke, as you can imagine, Duke is a noble title. But even though the canon is called the Kanun of Lekë Dukagjini, I think this doesn't mean that the canon was written by Lekë Dukagjini. Why? Because the canon actually is a collection of customs, of laws. So we're talking, first of all, of unwritten laws, not of written laws. And when I'm saying unwritten laws, I'm not saying unwritten laws as is in the English legal system, where judges create, that's to say, detect, found customs. No, we're not talking about judges. We are talking here about different communities, different families who interact with themselves and who create some customs by practice, and when that practice is established, then that practice is considered as binding, as obligatory, and so on. So we are, as I said, we're talking here of unwritten laws created by the interaction of different families. And these unwritten laws were created, as you can imagine, decade by decade and century by century. So they cannot be written, they could not be written by one person, such as Lekë Dukagjini. That's why I said that Lekë Dukagjini cannot be considered as the author of the Kanun. Maybe the Kanun is called the Kanun of Lekë Dukagjini because Lekë Dukagjini emphasized during his life the importance of these customs, of these unwritten laws. and this maybe led people to consider these customs as the customs of Lekë Dukagjini, the Kanun of Lekë Dukagjini. But as I said, I think that these customs were simply created by practices, decade by decade and century by century. The Kanun has not a single author, that's what I'm saying. When I say unwritten laws, I'm saying that they were passed on orally, that's to say mouth to mouth, from one person to another, from one generation to another. And these customs remained unwritten, that's to say they were passed on orally, until the beginning of the 20th century, because at the beginning of the 20th century, a priest called Zef Kryeqyqe, let me spell it, S-H-T-J-E-F-E-N, GJORØ, G-J-E-C-O-V-I, Zef Kryeqyqe, at the beginning of the 20th century, visited some families in Northern Albania, and he met a lot of people there, and a lot of elder people, and he recorded his conversations with them. That's to say, he wrote down, he took notes of his conversations with these families in Northern Albania, and he collected these notes, and they were published as a single book for the first time in 1931. So we can say that in 1931 the Kanun was codified, was transformed into a written text. That's to say, was not anymore simply unwritten customs. Now, what's important to understand about the Kanun, I think, is the fact that, as I said, these people didn't have a state, were not under Ottoman rule, and what's important, so they had to resolve their conflicts between different families by themselves, not by a public authority. Now, what's important and what's the most what's the best known about the Kanun, as far as I know, is the principle of blood revenge or blood feud. So this is the best known principle of Kanun, as far as I know. What does it mean, blood revenge or blood feud? Now, before I understand it, let me clarify that in these communities in Northern Albania a few centuries ago, until the 20th century, they considered criminal responsibility not an individual responsibility, but they considered it as a collective responsibility. What I mean here is that nowadays, for example, as far as I know, in most societies, criminal responsibility is seen as an individual responsibility. That's to say, you are not responsible for a crime that your brother or your father or your son committed, unless you collaborated with him. But in those societies, criminal responsibility was not considered as an individual responsibility. That's to say, it was considered as a collective responsibility, or to be more specific, as a familiar responsibility. This means that if you killed a member of another family, that all members of your family were responsible. So the victim's family could kill any member of your family. Because, as I said, criminal responsibility was considered as a familiar responsibility. Why? First of all, as I said, these societies didn't have a state. They were patriarchal, generally speaking, were patriarchal societies. They had some feudal elements, but generally speaking, as I said, they were patriarchal societies. And furthermore, they considered the honor as something that was related to your blood, to your DNA. So if someone killed a member of your family, then your DNA was made dirty, they said. Your blood was made dirty. And in order to clear up your blood, your DNA, you had to kill a member of the other family. So that's how they saw the honor. And when I'm saying between families, we're not talking about small families. We are talking about large families. Could be 20 or 30 people. Actually, in the same house could live actually maybe 3 or 4 couples, and each couple had its own children. So they were large families, maybe 20 or 30 people that lived together. And obviously, if the conflict is seen as a conflict between families, as you can understand, it could go on for decades and even centuries, because an individual dies, but his family goes on, because he has his children, and his children will have their children, and so on. And as I said, the conflict could go on from one generation to another between two families. Now, it's important to understand also the fact that these conflicts could also begin for small offenses. You know, it doesn't need that you had grave motives in order to have a conflict. The conflict could begin also for, you know, an offensive word and something like that. And maybe later the conflict became more serious and so on. And after that could end up with a killing, and after a killing with another killing, and so on. So that's why I said that these families didn't have a public authority that could resolve their conflicts between them. Okay, so I've finished with this first video. In the second video, I will talk about some character names in the novel, and I hope it will help you to understand better the novel. Thanks for watching.